So the last section of items we're going to discuss today is kind of a catch-all. These are basically a collection of a variety of the mistakes I've seen, and so sharing them with you to hopefully enable you to be more proactive with your clients, kind of identifying areas where food trucks can kind of seriously increase their liability and navigating them away from those areas. So first thing you're going to want to do is, like I said, a lot of clients come to you kind of further in the process. They've maybe already started operating. So you want to go back and look at their corporate documents. You're going to want to review their operations, check out their trademarks, both the name of their truck, but also any kind of specific menu items. And then just generally, you want to encourage your client to be a good member of the food and beverage community. Like I said, with a lot of clients who don't come from this industry, it really is a very kind of tight-knit community. And if you're doing things that either bring a bad name to the community or are directed at particular specific competitors of yours, it just creates a really bad atmosphere. And a lot of these issues that we've discussed, food trucks and restaurants really try to help each other out a lot of times, and so you're kind of destroying that ability for free advice if you're being a bad member of the community. So you're going to want to check and make sure they formed a legal entity. It seems very basic, but a lot of people haven't. They're operating some kind of sole proprietorship. Make sure they form the LLC or corporation. If they have other businesses, make sure that LLC or corporation is actually a new one for this food truck, and it's not just an LLC they have for another business. Food trucks, very literally, are a moving ball of liability. And so if you have your food truck connected to another business, all those assets are jeopardized in the event you get into an accident on the freeway with your food truck, which is very, very common. And so you just want to make sure that your assets are protected in that way. Do they have proper paperwork with their operating agreement, corporate bylaws? How are the business assets held? Sometimes individuals buy the truck and then form their corporation. And so if they hold the truck in their individual capacity, that's jeopardizing their individual assets as well. Again, with how contracts are being signed, a lot of times food trucks will have the individual owner sign on his individual behalf instead of on behalf of the company. Do they have proper insurance coverage? Does their insurer specifically know it's insuring a food truck and not a brick and mortar restaurant? Do you have commercial auto insurance? Do you have the proper workers' comp insurance if you have employees? All right, so when I'm saying that you should review client operations, many times other attorneys say, I don't own a restaurant, I'm not a food safety expert. If I review their operations, how will I know what I'm looking for? And in the words of Potter Stewart, you will know it when you see it. You see some outlandish things, just asking your clients to walk you through like an ideal day, and you'll hear it and you'll know exactly what the red flags are. So you're going to want to go through their procedures and policies, make sure they have step-by-step procedures. This is not only for food safety, but also just for making sure that they have the right people driving the truck every day, who has the proper training. Are there policies for the owners, the managers, the employees? Just simply having these in place, it goes a long way to preventing liability. Review the time and location of the activities they're conducting. Are they allowing adequate cooking time between shifts? Are they, sometimes you'll see a lot of food trucks and they say that they want to operate late night only. It's obviously a good crowd. However, sometimes the reason that they want to operate late night only is that they think that there will be less regulation at night. A lot of times these food truck regulations are instituted by the city, are enforced by the zoning department, and so if there's no one to call, no one's at work at that time, they think that they can get away with things at night that they can't get away with during the day. Have they attempted to use their home for any storing of food or any cooking? That is a huge no, but it will happen where sometimes someone will pick up food on their way home that they mean to take to the truck, but they're too tired to drive to the commissary to drop it off, so they keep it in their home kitchen. That is an absolute no. Review your client operations to ensure that everybody working there is actually an employee. I see it a lot where they maybe have daytime prep cooks who don't work on the truck. This is true at restaurants as well. And you think that simply because they're part-time, that means you can classify them as an independent contractor. You can't. You're their boss. They're your employee. The kitchen is a dangerous place. Someone's going to cut off the tip of their finger or slice something or drop something, burn themselves, and you're going to have a very sticky situation if you've classified them wrongly as an independent contractor when they should be an employee and you should have workers' comp insurance to cover them. For a little bit more, the Department of Labor recently kind of issued a really great codification of their stance on independent contractors versus employees, and it's a really good read. It just came out mid-July, and it's a very important resource for any of your clients that have employees or independent contractors. You're going to want to make sure that your client's employees are all trained properly, not only on food prep, but also safely using each piece of equipment that they're asked to use. And not only using that equipment generally, but using that equipment in the small confines of a food truck. Simply where it's placed and their limited mobility makes a big difference in their ability to safely use that piece of equipment. Are they trained in the menu? Can they help customers navigate particular allergies? Whoever's driving the truck, do they have, is a commercial driver's license required? This depends on the weight of the truck, and then also if it's being towed, there are different weight requirements if you need a commercial driver's license. But even if no commercial driver's license is required, are they properly trained? Are they comfortable driving the truck? Does your food truck think that it can sell alcohol? Everyone knows the most profitable line of a restaurant is the alcohol. That's where the margins are highest. You have the lowest waste. That's where restaurants make their money. And so sometimes if you do catch a food truck at the beginning, if you look at their business plan and they're expecting a certain amount of income from alcohol sales, you have to break it to them that, there is now one jurisdiction that allows food trucks to get alcohol permits. It's Portland. But in other jurisdictions, it's an absolute no-go. Most ABCs won't permit any establishment that doesn't have a permanent address. If you are moving around, that's the ABC is going to automatically say no. So kind of going through a few photos of some of these common operational problems. The reason I asked earlier to ask you to review your client's time and location of activities, a lot of times they're hustling. They're trying to make ends meet, and so they don't properly plan for cooking time between stops. And especially if you've got a client with a barbecue truck or some other kind of meat, they think, I can just continue letting that meat smoke or cook while we're driving down the highway. This is what happens when you cook while driving down the highway. Your food truck will catch fire. It's not safe. It actually, if you Google this, it happens really frequently, and people don't expect it to, but just last year I was driving home from work and there was a food truck on fire on the highway. It's very common. Again, with the home kitchens, this is something with the health department they absolutely will not tolerate, and this is something that you do see kind of scarily often, that people are prepping or doing things at home. It's either because they don't want to go to their commissary, or if they're renting their commissary by the hour, it could be a situation in which they had an unexpected event they need to prep food for, or they're trying to save costs on kitchen time. Like I said, with employee training, the kitchen is a very dangerous place. I don't think I've experienced any hand in the fryer accidents as this photo shows, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. The alcohol sales is one that comes up really, really frequently with food trucks, because it's such a profitable line of goods, but also you'll see trucks like these on a lot of food truck websites, and it's misleading because when you see these on a food truck with these taps on the side, it's gorgeous. Everyone wants to have that food truck. But typically when you see these are for caterers. And so if caterers are hosting or catering a private event, as long as they have this ability to sell alcohol, they can then also provide the service of serving that alcohol at a private event. But trucks like these are certainly not out there selling to the public. But so that can be confusing because food trucks will see other people doing it, but it's just caterers or they're in Portland. But yes, you really got to make sure that they know that they can't sell alcohol. Finally, you want to review their trademarks. This is something that you see very frequently, that not so much that they're not protecting their brand, but that they're infringing on the use of other people's trademarks. If they do want to register their trademarks, they can register the goods in the class for the food or the beverage, whatever the class is for that specific food that they sell, or they can register under the services for the mobile providing of food and drink. Kind of a few of my favorite trademark disputes. The Chairman Bao bun truck in California was infringing on the Chairman Bao menu item of a restaurant in New York, and they filed for trademarks. The New York restaurant was a pre-existing user, but they filed for trademarks within a day of each other, and it was in the food community. It was on Eater. It was a big to-do. This is Twisted Sister, is not in the food industry, but that does not mean you can name your food truck the Twisted Sister House of Hunger. They're not going to take it. They are definitely going to send you a cease and desist letter. Other use of famous names, a lot of food trucks have really great puns or plays on different things. The Frank Sinatra hot dog truck was forced by the estate of Frank Sinatra to change it to just Frank's. You'll see that a lot. And this also, when you start infringing, not so much on the celebrities or those other names, but when you start infringing on other food providers' marks or likenesses, this really gets into what I said about being a good member of the food and beverage community. And if you've got a food truck and you want to name it Little Italy, just don't do it. It's going to cost you money, and it's going to, raise the ire of Mario Batali. Food trucks specifically, because they are such a small community, if within a community, if one food truck is, blatantly violating the regulations, the city could respond negatively to the entire community. So if you're the bad apple, it's going to reflect poorly on other food trucks, and you could all suffer as a result. And so you'll see sometimes on Twitter or Facebook, food trucks sniping at each other over illegally parking, improperly parking, or selling in a way that they shouldn't be. And it's not good for the community as a whole if your client violates those regulations. And like I said, they're not going to be able to access that community help and advice from their peers if they're the food truck that's causing problems for everybody. Same goes with, this photo is a little bit hard to see, but this is a food truck parked directly outside of a Boston market. Even in cities that don't have proximity rules, and I also am of the opinion that these proximity rules are just kind of blatant competition protection that I don't think have any place in regulations. Good practices, though, don't park directly in front of another restaurant. And sometimes, if it's like a white tablecloth fine dining restaurant, no customer is going to confuse your food truck with that fine dining. They're not going to be set out for a really nice dinner and then be like, oh, I'll just stop here and get some street food instead. But if you're parking outside of a Boston market, that's definitely going to cause some issues with having the same customer base, and it's just not a good way to be a good member of the community.